After 6 years, well, technically 7, Jujutsu Kaisen finally comes to a mediocre end. Yeah, there's no real way to sugarcoat it. Like, it wasn't bad necessarily, just incredibly underwhelming, with how much was left unanswered or straight up ignored. Take the merger, for example, or the fake Kenjaku, or Megami, or Yuta, or Nobara, or you get the point. As a heads up too, don't expect this video to be that well structured. This is just kind of a Jujutsu Kaisen vent piece that I've wanted to get off my chest since the manga ended. You're also going to notice that the majority of these problems come from the tail end of the Shinjuku Showdown. I wonder why? Well, let's start simple. Hakari vs Uraume. Quite possibly the greatest definition of wasted potential when it comes to Jujutsu Kaisen. Aside from Megami anyway. For 31 chapters, we were blue-balled by Gege. Edged every time thinking these two delinquents would engage in hand-to-hand Jujutsu combat, only to be hit with them conversing and commentating over Sukuna's fight chapter after chapter until finally it seemed like we would see them lock in and fight one another until suddenly out of nowhere, Uraume gets Thanos snapped along with homunculus Sukuna. The worst part too is that they clearly were fighting off screen, judging by the fact Uraume is suddenly shirtless, or I guess robeless, and this demonic Cyclops cat decides not to show us even the smallest glimpse into their heavily anticipated fight outside of our brief glimpse in chapter 245. God, I hope Mappa gives us an anime original fight to make up for this missed potential. It's like the name of the video! So like, what the fuck was this about? I get that Takaba's domain allows him to overwrite reality for the funny, but creating a clone of Kenjaku and not elaborating really felt like the biggest middle finger from Gege, considering Kenjaku was cut a little short as a character. Get it? Cause like Yuta cut. And don't even get me started about Yuji's parents. Like, I get he doesn't really care about what happened to his parents, but fuck you, tell us anyway. Like, it's criminal he doesn't even interact with Kenjaku. In fact, I don't think there's even a scene where they come face to face outside of Shibuya, but even then he was mainly dealing with the Kyoto bombs and Yuki. Speaking of which, it also would have been nice to get a tidbit of info on how Yuki and Todo are connected, outside of her being his mentor, but it's not a huge thing. Just weird that it felt like something that was maybe overhyped from her incredibly brief introduction during the sister school exchange event. But hey, at least she wasn't wasted like Nobara, who had her entire backstory crammed in right before getting taken out of commission for 142 fucking chapters. It is kind of funny though in hindsight. Like, rolling up to the final battle with the exact same moveset from the beginning of the story is pretty comedic. You determine if that's in a good or a bad way. Gege wouldn't waste 2/3 of the main trio, right? Enter Megami Fushiguro, aka Potential Man. A joke that has admittedly been run into the ground at this point, but the message still holds true, as we were shown through Sukuna's fairly brief use of the 10 Shadow Shikigami, such as introducing Agito, essentially a fusion of various Shikigami, although to be fair, Megami's Great Serpent was killed by Sukuna in like episode 8, so he probably wouldn't have been able to actually use Agito to its full extent. Also, as an extra fun fact, Agito is partially comprised of a Shikigami known as Tiger Funeral, which is never actually used in the series. So add that to the list. Not only that, but Sukuna was also able to tame Maharaga, a feat that Megami would probably have been able to accomplish with extra training from Gojo or any other special great sorcerer, which considering Sukuna is in fact classified as a special great sorcerer / curse, he did have an unfair advantage in regards to taming Maharaga due to the decently sized skill gap between himself and Megami. Another reason why a sequel was probably needed to further flesh out the characters. Going back to Yuji's family real quick, or well, at least distant relatives, that of course being the Kamo clan, more specifically, Kenjaku becoming the leader of the Kamo clan. I get that it was to crush Norotoshi's dreams of living with his mother, or kind of at least anyway, but in the end, it just felt kinda wasted, especially since that's the most Kamo clan lore we get, and also the fact Kenjaku doesn't utilize the Kamo clan at all to his advantage. Like, he could have very easily utilized them to stop Jujutsu Hai during the culling game. Admittedly, this is a bit of a minor nitpick, but Sukuna not needing all 20 fingers to achieve his hand error form was such a shoddy cop-out, but at least in the end, Gege kinda made it work by making Pukuna too powerful to tether his consciousness to his remaining finger after getting soul sliced by Yuji. Guess we can't avoid this forever, unlike a certain someone. The merger just kinda felt pointless in the end. Like, it's a cool thing to have in the background, and also works incredibly well as a disastrous consequence if our heroes fail to stop Sukuna and Kenjaku, but the fact that it wasn't even acknowledged after Sukuna's death just really stings. Same with Cursed Spirit Tengen for that matter, who we are directly told not to worry about by the characters, even though you probably should considering she links all of humanity. Not to mention Tengen and the Six Eyes' fate being directly linked to one another, which again felt pointless, since nothing really major happened with Tengen after Gojo, and in tandem the Six Eyes were effectively taken out by Sukuna. Really felt like we were building towards some Attack on Titan ending territory, with Tengen's death and resulting in all of Kurt's energy dissipating from the world, akin to how all the Titans were eliminated as a result of the hallucinogenius death in AOT. Could have also maybe been a better ending. Well, I mean, it still wouldn't be perfect, but a lot better than how the series actually ended, considering just how anticlimactic that shit was. Six Eyes. More like, Yuda's a fraud. This MF literally showed up to be mysterious and badass just to fall flat on his face. Although, to his credit, Sukuna did have the thickest layer of plot armor, so all is partially forgiven. How this man tanked 2 hollow purples at point blank range will always be peak Shinjuku showdown, not derogatory. Yujo is just another case of how more could have been done with a character before immediately wasting them. You know who else was wasted? Not Yuji, bitch! Yeah, fuck out of here, potential mid, hacks fraud, the undying resilience of human kindness, aka Yuji Itadori, the goat of JJK. Well, I mean, second place to Gojo, but you get the point. The Kai Katan domain expansion man himself. It's honestly remarkable just how much of a glow up Yuji was rewarded over the course of the series. Like, he went from kind of reactionary at the beginning to, nah, that's my goat for real, up until the very end. Even having his arc with Mahito from season 1 come full circle, with Yuji being able to slowly but surely create a divergence between Megami and Sukuna's souls with his fists. Fucking fire handwriting gift for you, Gege. You've earned it with this one. Would he fumble? Yeah, probably, because now we get to arguably the most missed potential in the entire series. Ending itself. Not all of it was awful, like there were some admittedly great send-offs to characters that you would have never thought we'd see again outside of video games, like the Sword and Sumo duo, Charles, and even Rin, who was honestly the most surprising callback out of the lot. But where the ending falls flat in its face, like Yujo, is by simply being rushed. Trying to call back to the early chapters of Jujutsu Kaisen by having our main trio do some paranormal investigations just doesn't feel right with how much was left unanswered. If anything, it simply felt unearned in a weird way, by feeding the reader with an artificial sense of nostalgia for the early days of the series, which would have had a significantly more emotional impact if said previous unanswered plotlines were resolved, or if this sense of familiarity was used to lure the reader into a false sense of security by pulling the rug out from under their feet, by having a much darker implication of initiating the merger, setting up for either one more arc or a sequel, which would also lean back into the early horror aspects of the series that were lost along the way in favor of a traditional shonen battle setup, which isn't necessarily a knock against Gege or Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole. Personally, I think both approaches are valid, but at the end of the day, there simply should have been more. This, what we got, should have been a separate epilogue arc, not the climax to the Shinjuku showdown. If anything, the best aspects of this ending are the send-offs of both Gojo and Sukuna, by allowing these gods among men to be vulnerable for the first time in Sukuna's case, and the first time in an incredibly long time for Gojo. It's here that there's a glimmer of quality amidst an otherwise disappointing finale. Perhaps with the anime adaptation, they can walk a different path with Jujutsu Kaisen's ending. Now, with this yap session, it's important to note that my opinion of Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole hasn't really been too negatively impacted by this unfavorable conclusion, and yours shouldn't be either. Just because one aspect of a show doesn't go the way you wanted, doesn't mean you should think of the finished product as lesser, especially with how a series like Jujutsu Kaisen was able to captivate us as viewers, chapter after chapter, episode after episode. Because in the end, while it isn't perfect, it truly was our Jujutsu Kaisen.